Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll select this Bava Batra, Daf Kuf Samach Beis. We are going to begin on Kuf Samach Aleph Amud Beis toward the bottom. Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Rav Yochanan. So it said in the name of Rav Yochanan that we institute certain things in order to prevent a person from potentially causing documents to be miswritten or misused. First of all, kol machakin kulan. Anytime where you erase certain parts of the document, you need to write v'dein kiyumehoin, that these are verified. So when the sofer edits whatever he wrote, he needs to add that clause so that it's clear that he was the one that was involved in making this edit and no one else. Says the Rashbam, Besofa Shtar. This is at the end of the shtar, Lifnei Shar B'Kayim. Before you write the last words, which is Shar B'Kayim, Jim Enu Mekiyomin, if you don't write this, Ikol Meimer Shemachak V'Zayif, maybe it was erased by someone else and forged. And the guy basically wrote whatever he wanted after the witness is already signed. So therefore, basically, the sofer has to sign off that he was the one that did it. And also, you basically have to write the last line, which is redundant, which in itself, the last line doesn't have much value. My timer. So just first of all, let's see the answer. We don't learn anything from the last line. So therefore the last line basically has to be a repetition from something that was in the beginning. Says the Rashbam. So he says, we don't learn anything new from the last line, as we just read. Ninyano shel shtar umiyata lo nifsid klum im lo nilma mishita achreina shari kfar maforish lamalo masha kasa b'shita achreina. Everything that's on the bottom line is already something that's already been written at the top. So again, but why? Why do we do this? So the Rashbam explains, after you finish writing the body of the document, you have the witnesses that sign underneath the document. Now, typically, witnesses are not going to sign right underneath necessarily the last line of the body of the language of the document. Sometimes they'll write and sign a little bit below it, leaving a gap of extra space in between. There's a space in between. A person could potentially write another line which they want underneath it. So therefore, because that the last line is basically nothing, so basically the idea is that even if the guy would write something underneath it, you always know that the last line basically says nothing. So if he was able to fit in some material on the underneath it, you still have to have another line to write nothing underneath it. So therefore, that would avoid anyone from writing much in between those that gap. However, the Rashbam also points out, which is going to be the answer for question 3, sometimes maybe you could have some type of a chiddush on the last line. It says Rashbam, "V'she'ein kosa b'shtar shar v'kayim, Myri kein nir b'einai tamadav perish v'ikor." As we mentioned before, if you end off shar v'kayim, everyone knows that's the end of the document. So therefore, even if that last line says something, but once you see the word shar v'kayim, that's it, and the person can't write anything underneath it. And even if you write shar v'kayim a second time, you only write the word shar v'kayim once, and therefore nothing can be written underneath shar v'kayim. Okay. All right, let's continue. So again, Rav Amram Lefi Shein Lameda Mishita Achreina. Rav Nachman Rav Amram. So they asked the question to him, Menoach, how do you know that that's true? Zarmule desanya, hircha gadam, harchakas edim, shnei shitin, minaksa apostle. Even though there is a distance between, or gap between the end of the document and the signatures, the edim have to be careful not to have at least 2 full lines, because that makes it apostle, as we can understand. Because if you have 2 lines, so one line this guy can squeeze in something that he wants, and then the last line could be this line, which is a non-important line. So 2 blank lines is possible. Shitach is kosher, because again, what's he going to do? And this is actually question TA26. Hirchakas ha'edim in eksav shitach is kosher. Madua, as we said before, because she'ein lamedim shitach rona. So therefore, that last line, 1 line, he can't do anything with it. So mashnashnei shitin dilma mazayv kasav. Maybe we'll forge shitachas nami zayv kasav. Alav shmamina in lamedin b'shitach rona shmamina. So again, this is a proof that he can't have the last line with any chiddush. So therefore, if you have 1 blank line, it's not a problem. So we established 2 blank lines is a problem. 1 is kosher. How about 1.5? So that's Gemara's question. Kuf samach beis omid beis. Iboilu. Shito maxamai. What's the difference 1.5? So tashma. Here, because they had a mishneh sheet in posel. 2 is posel, which is mashma. Harsh sheet of a maxa kosher. Anything less than 2 would be good. So hema seifa shitach is kosher. Only 1 is kosher. Shitach hasuda kosher. Harsh sheet of maxa posel, which is mashma 1.5 is not good. El mahal lekel mashmina. We usually have this point that you can't make a diak from the Reish Seifa, which is goof what Taisa says over here. It's kind of interesting. Taisus doesn't always say this, but let's see this Taisus. V'reisha davka seifa lav davka. V'shita mechsa k'shita achas. T'kamer kosher dami. V'seifa davka reisha lav davka. V'shita mechsa k'shnei shitin u'posel dami. Okay. So we don't really have any proof from our statements. So my havalo, what is the din l'maskan, the tashma, the sanya? We learned it says like this: Here kekes edim shnei shitin miniksa apostle. If it's 2 apostle, pachs mekan kosher. So we see from here that even 1.5 is kosher. Let's look at question 4a. Here kekes edim shitin mesama din kosher, which is the same question as TB27. TB27. Edim shama harchikim chasimasim in a star shita achas kosher. Achas mechza kosher. Shnei shitin posel. It says matam. So I wrote shnei shitin psulin of achas mechza or shita achas kshera. Ein chashash lichtoi davar chadash. So you can't write anything on the last line. Okay. So it's 1.5. What do you got? You're not going to make it a smaller font. It'll be obvious that you tricked them. Okay. Let's continue. Let's say a person has 4 or 5 witnesses signed on a star. Now you only need to have 2 for a get poshet, 3 for get makosher. If you end up doing more, even if one of them, let's say, maybe even 2, depending on the type of document, is a carver apostle, tiskaimenis b'shar. You do not need to have all the Adam on the chasimus. Distinguish yourself a get of a star to be kosher. Even if there's someone is a carver apostle, it's still good. If you fill up the airspace with invalid signatures, it's still kosher. That's kind of strange, because what we said, if you have two lines of airspace, the get is puzzle. But if you fill it up with puzzle names, then all of a sudden it becomes kosher. Why? So a beautiful pshat based on the dinim of a schach of a sukkah. We know that if you have 3 tefachim of airspace, it's possible. We no longer say the din lavud. Schach pasul arba. However, it comes to schach pasul, it passes with more. Arba, says the Rashbam, shein schach pasul ella bar b'tefachim. So, if you have airspace of 3 tefachim, and you fill it up with metal poles, so all of a sudden, it becomes kosher, because it's less than 4 tefachim of schach pasul. So too, when it comes to a document, even though this document has edim, which are carver pasul, but it's better than having airspace, just like a sukkah, and therefore that will make the star kosher. Ad kan.